Black power means to me one thing: for the black people to control their communities politically and economically. That's what black power means. It doesn't mean that I'm going to burn down some white man's house or rape his daughter. You see, because that's not us. We don't commit genocide and all that. That's y'all bag. And we don't jump into their bag. Whitey jumps into our bag. Because like you see, he's trying to wear dashikis. Dashikis is our thing. He's trying to get a natu. Natus are our thing. Stay in your own bag. Don't come in our bag, because we don't want to have anything to do with you. So, you know, that's how it is. So I'm telling to the whites, you better hurry up and get yourselves together, because, like, we're getting ourselves together, and your time is almost up.
For white America has sold democracy out for chicken in every pot and 2 cars in each garage. And we're beginning to see a struggle coming to a head. And in New York City, I think throughout the nation, the next few days, the next few months, the next few years, the focus of the struggle will be control of schools.
Go ahead. Go right there and find out what right does they have to tell you to go home.
On September 9th, 1968, New York City planned to open its 900 public schools, but couldn't. The teachers' union closed them. Off and on, the strike lasted for 10 weeks. It was a confused and sometimes violent 3 months. At issue were 3 experimental school districts carved out of the huge system to see what would happen if real power was given to locally elected school boards in the ghetto. The object was to reduce or eliminate the city's enormous central bureaucracy. The catch-all word became decentralization. Behind that was the struggle to define and take power. This fall, 5 days before school was supposed to open, the city's Central Board of Education met to decide whether to curb the powers of the experimental districts or to let them continue. The city was in ferment. The teachers' union said it would call a citywide strike if the transferred teachers weren't put back. A public meeting was scheduled to announce the decision. But when board members came out to make the announcement, the levels of tension, anger, and frustration were too high.
We are here again tonight in disgust at Rose Shapiro and the other racist people sitting on this board.
We will write our own curricula.
By virtue of
Just a minute now.
By virtue of what authority? By virtue of what authority? No, sir. You cannot draw your line. By virtue of what authority? By virtue of what authority? Oh, no good, no good. He's making by virtue of... Let him finish. Let him finish. Hey.
We want somebody there that's going to be beneficial to our children. We are sick and tired of all that foolishness.
I would like to recommend that any teacher that go on strike Monday, do not let them back into the school for the rest of their life.
This is the Board of Examiners, which has produced the kind of system where we have 900 principalships in approximately 900 schools, and only 4 of them are black, and not one of them is a man, not one black man. And you know what they say? They say they don't discriminate. Well, my God, if you can do this with a structure, you don't have to discriminate. You know, it's kind of like during slavery. Can you imagine? Let me tell you, during slavery, how many reams of material were written about slavery? Can you imagine how much dialogue went on about slavery, whether slaves should have 1 bag of meal a day or 2, whether he should be given 2 pair of pants to wear or 1, whether he should sleep in the shed or be made to sleep out in the backyard, if he ran away, whether he should be allowed to go free or whether he should be brought back home. And after a while, people, you know, discussing these laws and rules and regulations about slavery, somebody said, what in the hell are we talking about? We got to do away with this whole thing. And this is what the people in Ocean Hill are trying to say. Do away with this ball game.
Like most such meetings, white or black, it went on for several hours.
Now, here's what will happen. We're going to require the Board of Education to draw the kind of lines that will be to your satisfaction. And we want to have a majority voice where we'll control it.
We made this meeting because we are black, concerned people fighting each and every day for our children and other people's children in the community. That is why we're here. Because we want and we know and we realize that we need black control.
I looked up at the dais when this meeting started, and I still look for the American flag. Wait a second. Under God, with liberty and justice for all. And what I am afraid is going to happen as a result of the proposals that have been made at this meeting is to split our district, to split our county, to split our country into two groups based on the color of one's skin.
On the day before school was to start, the teachers voted for a citywide strike. And the teachers quickly won support, but largely from the white areas. In the slums, the teachers' walkout was translated as a white front against the blacks. On a street corner outside the voting hall, the due process slogan came apart when a crowd of teachers tore into one who spoke out for community control. They doubted his credentials to teach at all.
I'll tell you my name. You go to my school and ask them about my teaching ability in all three schools. You'll be in for a shock.
You've got this job because we have had a union to fight for our rights.
I agree with you.
And you're sitting on the bandwagon licking the gravy.
Licking the gravy.
You sure are. Look how healthy you look. Oh, wow. Okay, beautiful. And you stay away from marriage because you cannot afford to maintain a family.
For change,
but you're certainly enjoying it.
The union in the past 5 years have come out paper after the 40 on my own.
The union is for change, but not the way you want it.
Change where you protect.
The hate groups, both white and black, are demanding quality education. They want quality education so their kids and their families can get into the middle class. Well, how in God's name can this ever happen if we don't teach them the national language, which is a middle-class language, if we don't instill a certain number of middle-class values? They are never going to get into the middle class. We were the leading school system in the United States when the parents didn't care. And they went to school, as my father did. He couldn't speak English once in my entire career and batted me across the face for a little minor incident. This is the kind of parent that made the New York City system what it was. Now this involvement, everyone thinks involvement is good. I submit total involvement is war.
The focus of this report is New York City, which has the most advanced, most expensive, and possibly the least effective public school system in the country, if only because it's the biggest. And what has happened in New York is already beginning to happen throughout the country. At the center of the struggle is the City School Board of Education. In New York, that means 13 private citizens who are appointed by the mayor and receive no pay. Normally, board decisions are made in private, and those decisions were once easier to make. Then the ghettos were quiet, and the board was predictable. It had only 9 members, 3 Jews, 3 Protestants, and 3 Catholics.
I would like to talk about my own appointment to see the political process in here. They needed a Catholic from Staten Island because the borough president was running like hell and he had to have one. So he pressured the mayor to get such a Catholic from Staten Island. And that's how I got on this board. And after I got on there, the borough president said, "To hell with him, he's not my kind of a Catholic, I belong to the other wing." He made an investigation at my church, reopened the screening panel, brought in his own kind of Catholic from Staten Island, and the screening panel didn't buy it.
Such simplicity has given way to the age. What came through most clearly was that here were private citizens faced with overwhelming problems, and they were torn by pressure groups, friends, and strong personal convictions. Rose Shapiro.
I think that community control is purely political and social and not educational.
We used to have a lot of grease between the wheels, that they wouldn't grind and make the grating sound of riots and trouble or Ocean Hill, Brownsville. We had enough goodwill in between the grinding wheels. We don't have it anymore. Everything that happens is a crisis, a confrontation, metal on metal. Remind me of, you go to Saigon and you sit on top of a hotel somewhere and you have a waiter serving you French wine and there's, machine gun fire and mortar shells and the sky lighting up and you're drinking French wine and, you're not participating. That's what I feel like about other school boards in big cities around this country. They're just not moving quickly enough, and they're going to get in the same bind we are, which is to react under pressure, which no one likes to do.
Once the issue was integration, now it's decentralization or community control. The challenge goes much deeper than the schools, but at one level it's still a confrontation between black and white. 9 out of 10 teachers in New York are white, but better than half, or more than 500,000 of the students, are not white. 85% of the third graders in the ghetto read so poorly now that even school authorities admit it is unlikely they will ever catch up. 30,000 students graduated with academic diplomas from New York City high schools last year, but only 700 of them were black. Clearly, it is not all the fault of the schools themselves. But for the ghetto teenagers, schools have become prison-like symbols of the dominant white society, which they feel isn't going to give them a chance.
They're not learning anything at all. The one in third grade, he gets first and second grade work, such as the spelling is cat and rat in the third grade, and it doesn't make any sense. The adding is terrible, and I tried to have them bust out. I couldn't get them bust out. The school's overcrowded. You go in the classroom, they got 40 and 50 children in a class. They have no supervision at all. The teachers don't care. They're there, but they don't care.
2 years ago, the Clinic for Learning at New York University started an ambitious teaching project in a junior high school in a slum section of Brooklyn. Money was no problem. The plan was to see if some mold for the future could be cast. The project was led by NYU professor Dr. John Robertson. At the end of the experiment, he said it was a disaster.
I would say that the schools are literally psychologically destroying ghetto children, meaning that the children are weaker each day from their experience in school rather than stronger. And I think what happens to the kid is that he does one or two things in the ghetto school. He either turns off the school completely and says that this is somebody's playing games with me, and I'm going to turn you off. Or he ingests the failure himself and says, I'm the problem and I can't learn.
Opponents of community control charged that the militants would be teaching warfare tactics and revolution, and that the curriculum would be destroyed by wild innovations. If anything, just the opposite is true. Except for a few schools, there has been very little innovation aside from increased attention to black history. In fact, school administrators are becoming sensitive about the question. Another problem is the community itself. As sociologists have pointed out for years, the heart of the black community is solidly conservative. And that's even more true in the Puerto Rican community. Mrs. Virginia Bell is the community coordinator for IS 201.
But problems here are compounded by the problems of the home environment, the problem of the adults in the home and the smaller children. It makes it difficult for us because it takes a great deal of effort to get children education-minded, education-oriented, interested in education for the sake of education. The child is not interested in history, period, black or white. He couldn't care less about Harriet Tubman bringing hundreds, it sounds hard, but it's true. Harriet Tubman bringing hundreds of slaves across to the north. This doesn't mean anything to a black child. He has to see now, because black children live, and grow up much faster than white children as far as what's going on, the realities of everyday living are concerned. And these things are like fantasy to them.
We bring teachers into this system, and after 2 years they're granted tenure.
Now, there has to be hundreds of cases of people who simply can't make it. So that's, when you talk about costs, God, I think the more relevant business is that granting of tenure. And here in Staten Island, you're so ideally blessed. Good God, praise the Lord. You have 200 teachers who want to fight to get into your system. Take the ones with 2 years. Say to them, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to evaluate. Your professionals are going to evaluate them. You have not got an automatic tenure. We, the local school boards, are directing the principals. And if a principal kids you, if year after year after year there's no shadings in evaluations, then by God, he's not doing his job. Any person charged with the responsibility of children in these vexing days that can't do the job. I've been an old union guy. I simply don't care. I don't think seniority rolls over the kind of preciousness and the kind of destruction that can be heaped by that. And I have physically been in classrooms where, my God, I want to cry to get out of there.
Parents should play a far more important role in the education of their child than they now play. And if this is what is meant by decentralization, then there's a great deal of hope. But it is confused today with community control. We talked with a group of parents that came in to see me this morning, deeply concerned that a few demagogues under the label of community control are making it impossible for them to function in the way in which they were accustomed to function. They're frightened by it. They feel that they don't have the voice that they had.
In a way, I'm not against decentralization. I'm just against the way the governing board is operating. It's like dictatorship to me. We are told what to do. We are never asked if we would like to have it or not.
Another thing, when you go to those meetings, every time you raise your hand can be up for 20 minutes. They'll never answer your question.
Are the meetings well attended?
No.
You know,
by their members, but not by the people.
According to the way they want it.
As a person, you're entitled to your opinion. And in our district, you're not supposed to voice your opinion. And you're grown. Is this what happened in America?
We feel that in any decentralization proposal that is passed, that there must be a system of safeguards, of checks and balances, by which the central board can monitor and enforce and maintain citywide curriculum standards and monitor the district performance. Now, this is where we differ from the advocates of absolute community control. We do believe in a system of checks and balances, of some central safeguard.
The idea behind comprehensive schools is to combine the vocational and academic programs under one roof. The youngsters would then share similar activities, and the stigma now attached to vocational schools would be removed.
Those youngsters will be taking what are known as occupational or vocational studies. We will phase out all of the vocational high schools of the city ultimately. Now, we have not been able to make those high schools comprehensive because of political pressure. And I'll tell it to you. We started in Brooklyn. We took 4 high schools and we said we're going to add wings on them. Whoa, brother, did they come out of the box out of Brooklyn? I sat there and every Paul and his brother came out of the box and said, and I'll give it to you like it is. They didn't say it, they said, we don't want any kids coming in this school. Now those are the facts. We have dumping grounds called vocational high schools in many places of this town. And I don't propose, nor does any member of this Board of Education propose to continue those dumping grounds. We intend to add wings on the high schools for the purposes of making relevant curriculum for the world of work. And I don't mean basket weaving. I mean those curriculums have to be changed and changed regularly so that the youngsters don't have to be embarrassed about the fact that they're attending a vocational component of a high school.
Still think that it should be citywide. And if anybody knows human nature in this town or in any town, just give a group of people some power, they'll never give it up, they'll fight you tooth and nail.
Not all teachers are against community control, but those who are can be mobilized quickly to apply political pressure. In New York, the spokesman for the union is Albert Shanker, president of the UFT. Shanker claims community control is only a ploy. condone to escape more serious problems.
Now, it's terrific for the people in the urban coalition and all these other rich characters, including the mayor, and including all these others, to say, no, it's not money. All you have to do is have community control. Boy, is that terrific. Then I don't have to pay any more taxes. I'll put these 15 poor characters on a local board, and when their kids fail, I'll say, it's your fault. You're now on your local board of education. Your kid can't read? You have a lousy board of education. And it's a damned lie to go into Harlem and Bedford-Stuyvesant and tell people that merely by electing local people to their board of education that their kids are going to do the way the kids in Scarsdale do. Scarsdale could be taken over by the government of France tomorrow. And those kids would do precisely just as well, because they learn to read and write and talk at home, and they've got breakfast, and they've got stimulation, and they don't have rats, and they don't have poverty, and the local control is absolutely irrelevant. It wouldn't make any difference if you bombed out the entire local board of education and replaced them with men from Mars, and you know it. Yeah. And everybody else knows it. And we better stop kidding ourselves about the romance of local control, because local control can mean local oppression and local terror and local non-participation and local private elections where nobody else has a chance to run. Stop kidding them that with an election you're going to solve their problems. You know what they need? Money.
I'm in favor of decentralization, as is the Board of Education and as is the UFT, but I just fear that I might be released for no specific reasons without a fair hearing.
I went to school the hard way. I came up the hard way. I'm a depression baby. I'm a college dropout that went back. And I am not going to stand around and let people upset what I have slaved away for. I'm not going to let any Tom, Dick, and Harry walk into a classroom and just teach because he has some sort of an affiliation. I don't care what the group is. If these were men from the moon, you know, who suddenly decided to upset our whole system, it doesn't matter who they are. It's not a racist issue.
The decentralization bill proposes that the local districts handle many of their own supply needs. The board has also urged decentralizing another huge operation, the Central School Lunch Kitchen. Lunch for 150,000 children is made here. They go through 500 pounds of salt a day, 60 million eggs a year. It's charged that the bureaucracy is too centrally controlled to be effective. In a sense, quite the opposite is true. The system is so large, nobody is in control. It's hard to get something started, but once it's going, it's almost impossible to stop.
I went to Gene Hulter and I said, this is insane. Down in John Jay, I defy you to go and see this place. They had an extension with $1.5 million cafeteria. You walked out of it, you thought you were back in biblical times. The old building had the new one on it, and they, you know, no transition. They put $1 million into a new auditorium. If you've been to John Jay, they got a gorgeous auditorium. They took out all of the strut work and the rest, and they put in a gorgeous auditorium. To enter it from the street, you come through two old barroom doors that are practically breaking into a little foyer that's so dark you'd almost damn near die, and then you walk into David Merrick and the dancers. I said, what in God's name? Do people come through that door to go to $1 million auditorium and that little foyer isn't fixed? And John McCarthy was the superintendent. He said, John, I asked him $35,000 to fix that exterior and the doors so that it would look one piece. He said, I couldn't get it. I said, you're going to get it. 2.5 years this mess went on.
Oh, it could take 6 months. And what? If the job is over $25,000, it has to be approved by the budget director.
Mr. Chairman, the mayor of the city, whoever he may happen to be at this particular time, has the right to appoint all his commissioners.
I move that the mayor appoint one, the governor appoint one, and the two appoint the third.
You can't move that, and you didn't get a second of my motion, or even try. If you can't get a second of my motion, I'll accept it.
Oh, all right.
But you can't use the chair to take advantage of me like that.
I sure as hell can.
In a Queens synagogue, they booed Lindsay when he appeared during the strike.
And it is not every day that I am called an agent of militant black extremist at one time, and an agent
Mayor Lindsay never finished his thought, but it was clear enough. Both sides, black and white, are charging the other with asking too much and giving too little.
It was almost 200 years ago that a Jewish philosopher noted, "The hand held before the eye can hide the tallest mountain." It is time to take that hand away and to see what kind of schools, what kind of city we could have for ourselves and our children if we were willing to talk and to listen and to act. That may not be much, but it is all that we have. Thank you.
There are better places to start from, but that's where New York is, and it's not likely that what happens in New York will stop at the city line.
I am Jim Benet, education reporter for KQED-TV in San Francisco. Behind me is Polytechnic High School, which has become a center of conflict and a major symbol of the city's problem with its school system, a system in which the average 10th grader reads about 2 years below grade level, and in which Polytechnic students read another year below even that poor record. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and other groups of concerned citizens have pressed for years for school improvement and for racial integration. But a conservative school bureaucracy has accomplished little up to now. Many schools, like Poly, are racially unbalanced, and most of them are very poor in academic achievement. The Board of Education has shifted very gradually toward greater concern. This year, the board elected as its new president Dr. Laurel Glass, one of its liberal members, and an associate professor of anatomy at the San Francisco Medical Center of the University of California.
Jim, the message I keep getting is that they're really saying our kids aren't learning. If they don't learn, they're not going to make it in the society, and if you can't teach them, move over because we want to try. There's considerable discontent both in the white middle class, upper middle class, and in the minority poverty areas.
Do you think those can be stilled, that those antagonisms can be quieted by decentralization?
I think we've got a long road through this anger, a long road through healing the injustices that have been heaped on the very poor, on the minority, on the immigrant, on the black and brown and Asian, yellow. I wish I thought that decentralization were the panacea, but it certainly seems to me that some forms of decentralization have to be taken in very soon.
The idea that Los Angeles minority area schools are substandard is no longer even challenged by many members of the Board of Education or top school administrators. Fremont High School here in South Central Los Angeles is one of these schools. The dropout rate in some schools tops 50%. This rate, coupled with low achievement scores in such basic skills as reading, are similar to the failures in New York. Militant groups are calling for local control over curriculum, as well as administrative and teacher selection. The most recent confrontation took place here at Fremont High School. Mounting tensions finally erupted when students and parents insisted on exercising authority over the appointment of a new principal.
Many people of a conservative nature, black people, are saying to me now, you've got to put a stop to this. We've got to have school open. These youngsters cannot afford to lose any time in school. They need it. It's going to hurt them. They won't be able to get a job. Yet the same youngsters, many of these same youngsters that we're talking about, don't feel that they're going to get a job anyhow. They feel that they're locked out. They don't feel that their education has any relevance to their immediate life. Therefore, they're not tempted at all to think about the future, either the near future or the far future.
Washington, D.C. is an underdeveloped territory, still without an elected mayor or city council, governed by Congress but not represented in it. Until last Monday, the school board was one picked by federal judges. Now Washington has an elected school board, which doesn't, however, control school revenue or expenditure. But though backward in many respects, Washington began trying decentralized school administration some time ago. The Morgan School, in the words of its principal, is run by the community and not by the Board of Education. A community board makes the hiring and firing and curriculum decisions made elsewhere by the Board of Education. By all accounts, the neighborhood and the principal have made a far better thing of Morgan than the failing school it was a few years ago. Mr. Haskins, the principal, rejects reading scores as a measure of success, but his school and the idea of community control were given a boost last year when reading scores at Morgan went up. The superintendent of schools and the head of the Washington Teachers Union and the Board of Education all support the idea of community control and have declared themselves willing, even eager, to make accommodations to help realize it. At the time of the 1954 Supreme Court school decision, Washington school children were about half white, half Negro. Now, 94% of the pupils are black. White families left for the suburbs or made other arrangements for their children. Most of the parents and 80% of the teachers are black. A majority of members and the chairman of the Board of Education are black. The president of the Teachers Union is a Negro.
As mentioned at the outset, this was described as a story about schools, but not necessarily about education. And perhaps that's the greater tragedy. Virtually absent from the New York scene and from other big cities is a sense of confidence that anyone knows what to teach disadvantaged children in the slums or how to teach it. In Harlem, rambling school buildings are called failure factories. Many belong in the museum. And so do many of the school bureaucracies across the country which have grown up around the system of central management. But at some point, the political fight must turn from the struggle for control to a search for quality education. In the end, it means an expensive search to find better ways to make a youngster and his education relevant to the 20th century. While that process may have to start with a community boycott or a teacher strike, its goals will not be assured by those events. The next chapter requires new ideas and the money to make them work. Regrettably, neither fresh ideas nor new money are now in sight.